Swinging a high drive into center field. Hits at the wall. It is gone! Casas does it again. It's gone! It's into the bullpen! This game is tied! This game is tied!
He swings and rips one to center field. It's high, it's deep, it's back, it's gone! Sale winds, he fires. Swing and a miss, strike three, it's over! The Red Sox have won the World Championship!
Welcome back to Play Tessie. It is episode 137. If you're listening on drop day, it is a crisp fall, September 26th. This is the official podcast of breathing those final breaths of the 2024 season, also known as the official Red Sox podcast of WEEI. Before we get going, remember, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening, rate us 5 stars, all that. On YouTube, WEI channel, Play Tessie playlist there. Hit the thumbs up on the videos, and we're on the socials at Play Tessie on both Twitter and Instagram. Here with Sammy and here with Pat. And just a quick yes or no before I'm gonna read the thing I tweeted after. So, if in case you're living under a rock, the Red Sox got mathematically eliminated tonight as we record after the third game of the Blue Jay series. Just curious, yes or no? Were you guys at all buying into the weird formula of things that needed to happen for the Red Sox to make the playoffs?
No, not even remotely.
Okay, good. I'm glad you guys weren't there. I wasn't there either. But all right, let's have it. I'll just give you my thoughts. I tweeted it out, but I'm going to read it here. Sox have officially been eliminated from postseason contention with 3 games left in the season. Before the season, I had them as a 76-win team, and plenty of them had them worse. So for them to make it this late in the season before elimination is an accomplishment for the players who exceeded most expectations. They did the best with a roster that wasn't supplemented before the season the way it should and could have been had ownership not slashed the team's budget. Don't get it twisted, though. This season was far from a success. Hard to call any season without a postseason birth of success. They've had one quote-unquote successful season in the last 6 seasons. That's what we want, or that's what we watch for and deserve as fans. A step in the right direction this year? Absolutely. I don't think you can deny that. And I can appreciate that while understanding that they're not where they need to be and they're not where they will be. Is that fair?
Yeah. You're basically saying they met the bar that we set for them, but we shouldn't be setting a bar so low. We kind of all agreed, I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, at the beginning of the year that we just wanted meaningful baseball into September, and we got that down to the wire. And I don't think any of us are thrilled, but that's the product of a low bar. And Gordo, like you said in your beautifully written piece just now, this is not a success. You can't call it a success even if they did meet that low bar. It's more frustrating than anything that we had to kind of talk ourselves into this team over and over and over again. And it's just such a far cry from what we grew up watching in the early 2000s and the teens and everything. And now it's just, I don't know. My brain is kind of all over the place. They've been eliminated in my head for about a week now. And yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about the future. I'm really kind of at a loss. I'm trying to think, and every time I think one thing, I contradict myself in my own head. So I need this offseason to start. I'm excited for the playoffs and everything, but if I could fast forward through them, I think I would do that right now.
Yeah, and this kind of bodes the question, but yeah, Pat, I'll ask it to you. Can any season be a success? Even if you meet or even exceed the bar, because they exceeded my bar that I set for them, but I don't consider the season a success. Craig Breslow talked to the media today. He said he doesn't see it as a success because he says they play for the playoffs. Pat, do you think there's any world in which you can have a successful season in which you don't make the playoffs?
Yeah, not this year. This year is by any meaning of the word success was 2024 a success. But I think circumstantially, without making the playoffs, you can absolutely have a successful season. If you're, let's say, the White Sox next year, and you have Drew Thorpe up, you have all of your top prospects up, and they all play incredibly well. They all look like they can be full-time major leaguers. That's a successful season for a garbage team in the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, maybe the answer is that the Red Sox, because you're right, that if the White Sox were like 2 games, if they miss the playoffs by 2 games next year and all their prospects look amazing, like, yeah, that's a successful season. I don't think there's ever a world where the Red Sox can have a successful season missing the playoffs, which is what has made this last 6 years of Red Sox baseball so excruciatingly hard to watch. And just, it's been dog shit as fans since the second the thrill of winning the 2018 World Series wore off. It has been just consistent hell. And the only breaths for air that we've gotten were the first few months of 2021, and then the last 2 or 3 weeks of 2021, and then maybe a couple weeks in the middle of 2022, a couple weeks in the middle of 2023, and maybe a couple of months in the middle of this year. And when it's the Red Sox, when you have an ownership group that prints money that should never be significantly below the luxury tax. If you're paying that kind of money, or you have the ability to pay that kind of money, you should pay that kind of money. And if you are paying that kind of money, you should always have a competitive team that is in the playoffs, in the playoff hunt. And if you're going to miss the playoffs, it's a one-off and you're right back in it next year. And it hasn't been that way for 6 years. And I thought last year at this time that last year would be the end of it. I think right now that this year is going to be the end of it. I think that we're going to see a lot of awesome young players come up next year. But in the end, what's been proven is it's not just about what's going on down there. It's about what happens up here. So are those guys that are going to come up? We talk about the big four all the time. Are they going to produce, and are they going to produce right away? Is Craig Breslow going to make the right trades? Is John Henry going to open up the checkbook at all? Or is the budget going to stay the same or go down for a second consecutive year? These are all questions that need to be answered before I can truly sell myself on the immediate future of the Red Sox. I have hopes, but I'm always just the entire offseason is going to be us getting little glimmers of hope, and then, at least for me, mentally shutting it down in my head because I don't want to get hurt again, because it's happened so many years in a row.
Yeah. Plus, I'm also going to have to be doing mental gymnastics about Craig Breslow. And this is kind of funny that we're so locked into this that we can pre-predict the mental gymnastics that we're going to be doing. It's hard for me to feel super confident in Craig Breslow, not because I thought his trades didn't make sense. The results were just really bad for the most part. Not all of them. He had some hits. Like, I like Quinn Priester, but like Chris Sale might win the Cy Young for the Braves. Yeah. Vaughn Grissom hasn't been much. None of the relievers here acquired at the deadline have been good. And they've been awful. Danny Jansen, not good. I like the Tyler O'Neill signing. That was good. Or trade, excuse me. But overall, just the result. James Paxton, I forgot that even happened. There was like a bad dream. The concepts made sense. The results were bad. So I'm kind of in the middle on Breslow, and with him leading the way, it's going to be so hard for me to form strong opinions because I just can't really get a feel for if he's good at this job or not. It's such a hard first season to grade. I saw on Twitter today, I saw people giving him a B+ and a D-, anything in that range. So couple that with the way the last few off seasons have gone, and I feel, again, very, very lost as a fan. I don't know how to feel about the future, and I kind of just I don't like the mystery. I don't like this feeling. It's not good.
Yeah, I'm with Sammy. Like, I wouldn't say I'm like, oh, Breslow knows exactly what he's doing. He's got this. I have no qualms about him this offseason. But I don't think you can really give him like a definitive assessment grade after this year. Because if you think about it in a vacuum, really, his 3 biggest moves, or 3 of his like 4 or 5 biggest moves, are going to be really valued next year. Does Giolito show up? Does he make a full recovery? Is he regain the form that Breslow signed him to do? Is Liam Hendricks going to be a 4th out of the bullpen? Is he going to be your 8th inning guy? Is going to be your go-to closer? What's that look like? Is Michael Fulmer going to be a meaningful bullpen arm next year? So those 3, until you get a full season of those 3, Yeah, I would say anywhere from a D plus to a B. If all those guys pan out, the first 2 year, 10 year, depending on what he does this offseason, sure, B, B plus, whatever. Those three shit the bed. You don't do, and you repeat last offseason. You trade for a corner outfielder with a year control. You don't sign any starters. You're looking at a D. There's literally no in between.
I'll push back on you guys on this. First off, I think you got to understand that with Craig Breslow, you're coming into a new organization where you don't know the system, and it's hard to be convicted on trades because you just don't know the system. And then B, you're given not just a budget of where you were at. They've decreased the budget, so you had to work with that. I'll list off a couple of moves that he made that I think have been resounding successes. The Tyler O'Neill trade was spectacular. He acquired a 30 plus home run guy for quite literally nothing. Nick Robertson got DFA'd this year, and the other guy is absolutely nothing. The Verdugo trade. Richard Fitz, in his first 3 starts, posted a higher WAR than Verdugo in his 146 games with the Yankees. And he also got Greg Weisser and another lower minors pitcher. So that's a resounding success. Justin Slayton with the trade post Rule 5 draft. You have maybe your closer of the future there. Romy Gonzalez claim from the White Sox, a move that no one paid attention to at the time. My God, I can't even imagine how they were bad against left-handed pitching this year. Imagine it without him. And then obviously Priester, TBD, but that's looked good. And then obviously you can point to the steps forward that a lot of pitchers in the system have taken and from the majors to the minors due to the infrastructure that he put in place. It's 1 year. I think you can look at the trade deadline as his biggest failure. I think the Sale trade, I think you can chalk it up as it's not going to work, while also understanding that there are still years to go on Vaughn Grissom to make it look better than it does today. So obviously that I don't know if that's ever going to look good, because if Chris Sale were on this team, they probably make the playoffs, since he would have been on the team from start to finish. But you look to the deadline, and we were talking about this before the podcast. So Sammy, I'm glad you brought this up. The Red Sox felt that they needed to fill 4 holes at the deadline. They thought they needed a starting pitcher. They thought they needed 2 relief pitchers, and they thought they needed a right-handed bat. Those are all things that we talked about them needing in the offseason. And ownership didn't give Craig Breslow the budget to acquire those things with money. So now, instead of going into the deadline with 1 hole to fill, and you can maybe, it's the same thing as we had with Heim a couple off seasons ago, where he was like, we need 7 or 8 players this offseason. So he's spreading all the money across for 7 or 8 guys.
Gordo, real quick.
Yeah.
Can I interject? Does this not feel not exactly the same, but very similar to Heim Bloom, where you go over the list of the trades and most of the ones he got right are the fringe ones. And then none of them were super impactful, except for O'Neill. I'll give him credit for that. That was really good. But
Sammy, but what impactful moves did he truly attempt? I'd argue 1.
That's what I'm saying. Well, he tried to get a starting pitcher at the deadline. That was a disaster. He tried to get 2 relievers at the deadline. Those were both disasters. He tried to get a right-handed bat at the deadline. That was a disaster.
But Sammy, what I'm trying to tell you is, because he needed to fill all those holes, he had to spread the love. They traded a bunch of prospects. I forget the number. I think it was 13 prospects to get these guys. And guess what? If they'd signed like a Teoscar Hernandez, I understand that with Wilyer Brady and everything, the fit may not have been as good as it looked in the offseason. But if you added a right-handed bat in the offseason, now that's no longer a need to fill. If you'd signed Michael Lorenzen in the offseason, or any of the other million starting pitchers they were either interested in or fans wanted, then that's not an issue. Bullpen should have probably been the only thing you need to fill. Then you can aim a little bit higher. Maybe they go for what's the guy? Urseg. They could have gone for like Urseg or something. Maybe they should have done that anyway. But I'm just saying, when you have fewer needs to fill, you can aim higher. And before I actually want to give you guys a chance to respond to this. How does it make you feel? Is this a good or a bad thing in terms of Breslow? He was interested in Shota Imanaga. He was interested in Seth Lugo. He was interested in Jack Flaherty. He was interested in Teoscar Hernandez. He wanted those 4 guys. Not all 4 of them, but the Red Sox were definitely interested and outbid for those 4 guys, and all 4 of them had awesome seasons this year. Do you take that as a positive because their head's in the right place? Or do you take it as a negative because even though their head's in the right place, the ownership doesn't give them the money to spend on it?
It's a positive for Breslow. It's a negative for the organization. It's this. I feel like we've had this conversation like 3 years in a row. Like they identified the right guys and they didn't get any of them. So it's hard for me to be positive about that. I'm glad Breslow knows that Imanaga is going to be good. I didn't think Imanaga was going to be very good. I was freaked out by his fly ball rate. Breslow apparently wanted him badly, so glad he got that right. But I mean, how positive can you be when none of this came to fruition? I feel like how long can we survive off of like, this is positive because if it did happen, ... like, this doesn't feel like the Red Sox. This feels like we're building a friggin' Detroit Tigers team or something where you got to build on the margins and make all these, smart under the radar decisions to build up your team because you've limited resources, and just shouldn't be like that. And we have no idea if Craig Breslow is going to be limited again or if they're finally going to go back to normal. I mean, these guys have made, how many times have they made the playoffs in the last 5 years? Once? One
The
time
Red
in the
Sox?
last 5 years?
Are you saying the Red Sox?
2021? Yeah.
6 years. They missed in 19, they missed in
19.
20, made it in 21, missed in 22, 23, 24.
And they finished last place 3 of those years. And this year they're barely not finishing in last place. Like, it's just, what the fuck is this? It's so depressing. Like, this isn't the Red Sox. I don't know. So basically that's where my head keeps going to. And I can already see it happening live in real time. I have a take, but then like you said, Gordo, your head drags you back to earth and it tells you, no, this isn't going to happen. You've seen what's happened the last 3 seasons. They don't let the GM spend. He's going to be limited. You're going to have to rely on guys like Tyler O'Neill, who were good 2 years ago and have been hurt. Maybe they'll bounce back with you. Or Vaughn Grissom, he's blocked. Maybe he'll turn into what he's supposed to become. And then the biggest part is I feel like they're going to put everything on these young guys like Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer, Kyle Teal, Campbell, and we feel good about them. But then you look at guys like Jackson Churio, who had like an okay season, but he was ice cold to start. Jackson Holiday hasn't been great this season. He was the number one both of those guys were the number one prospects in baseball. So it's just, again, I feel like we're going to do this whole song and dance next year, relying on guys who haven't done it before to just step into these big roles. And hey, you're in charge of the Boston Red Sox, Roman Anthony. You're the catalyst in the lineup. One of the catalysts in the lineup. It's probably going to be Durant if he stays. I don't know. Could go a million different ways. I'm spiraling right now. I don't know what to think, but best of luck to Craig Breslow, because holy shit, it's a lot.
So I want to go to some of the stuff that Craig Breslow said to the media today. This is from Alex Spear's piece in the Boston Globe, but it makes me a little bit nervous. I'll combine 2 points that Breslow made into one. So first I'll read you what he said about adding a frontline starter. He was, just to give you the spoiler, he was non-committal about it. He said, I think every team needs someone to front the rotation. I think the question is, what does that look like? Where does the availability come from? Do we have guys that can take another meaningful step forward and pitch at the front of the rotation? There were stretches this season where any number of guys pitched like legitimate front of the rotation starters. Last offseason, the Red Sox, actually that's more right. Okay, the other side of that, no, never mind. Were we on the right guys? And I think the answer is yes, which I think bodes well for our ability to identify the right guys again. The other side of that is, but they aren't the Boston Red Sox. They aren't on the Boston Red Sox right now. And I think there are lessons to be learned there as well. Basically, what he's saying is he's being non-committal about adding what we all see as a frontline starting pitcher. He's leaving the door open for guys to take a meaningful step forward. And it looks like he's leaving the door open to try to identify like this free agent class's version of like Seth Lugo and Jack Flaherty and Shota Imanaga, who they were in on but didn't pay. And then I'll combine that with, he talked about the fact that they're going to need to trade from their crop of young middle infielders and left-handed hitting outfielders. So I think they'll be exploring all avenues of the trade market. I think he's talking about exploring the mid-tier class of free agents, but it doesn't, I don't know. Like I will not read into quotes from the GM this offseason. I'm just not going to do it. But if you want to do it, that's what it's telling you. Am I wrong?
Yeah, dude, I hated that quote.
Did I stab you in the heart with that?
I want to throw up. This is
we're gonna do
this.
It sucks.
No,
I mean, it just, Sammy.
I see on Twitter people be like, well, if the Red Sox sign Corbin Burns or Max Fried, then they can. And I'm like, dude, Stop. Just give it up. It's not going to happen. Craig Breslow has probably already been told you're going to be restricted. Like that's the lead. And you know me, I hate reading into quotes at all. But that was the most like discouraging thing you could have possibly said. That was Heim Bloom 2.0. That was the same thing. Oh man, do you think those Oakland A's fan groups make those sell T-shirts in red and navy blue? Because we might need those.
Sammy, do you want to hear another quote that you're not going to like?
Yeah, just keep them coming.
Yeah. Okay. So this is Craig Breslow when asked if the Red Sox were going to be able to spend. And I'll give you a spoiler. It's a non-answer, but I want to preface it by saying last year at his intro press conference, when Breslow was asked if he was going to be able to spend, he said that the finances were not like he was not going to be limited financially and that this is the Boston Red Sox. And that's what he said last offseason.
Oh,
and
sweet,
then
sweet
he
boy.
said,
how sweet.
And then he said, when they had a team that was ready to compete, like I think the quote last year was something along the lines of, our patterns now are not indicative of future of the way we're going to operate in the future. And about a week ago, he talked about how good of a spot the build is in and how they're going to have to target impact players because the build is in such a good place. So I'm prefacing this quote with that. This is Craig Breslow on Wednesday on if the Red Sox will be able to spend this offseason. Quote, "Those conversations are always ongoing. I feel like when opportunities to improve our team exist, and we should be aggressive in trying to find those opportunities, we take them to ownership. I think we're going to have the support to do that, but it's kind of premature right now to say exactly what that will look like outside of everyone in this organization is excited about what we believe is going on and happening here." So like, he like kind of gives like a slight hint of like, yeah, like we'll go to ownership with anything and we believe we'll have their support, but not really. Like 85 to 90% of that quote was not answering it. It's certainly a less confident quote than we got last year when he took the job. So you can't feel encouraged with that.
No, he keeps referencing internal stuff, and Richard Fitz has been really good, which worries me because I feel like they're going to say, hey, Tanner Houck pitched like an ace. He's our number one guy. Brian Bayo really looked like a quality number 2 starter in the second half. Okay, Lucas Giolito, look at his track record. He's been a 1 or a 2, and that's our 3. You got to feel real good about that. Cutter Crawford, he really came out of his shell in 2024. He looks good, and you saw Richard Fitz to end the season. Man, he's going to be our 5th guy. So how could you not feel good about what we got going on here in Boston? And then I'm just going to be projectile vomiting everywhere all the time because we are just going to... I keep coming back to this. We're going to be living this same scenario over and over and over again because these guys don't fucking care anymore. So frustrating. I almost feel bad for Craig Breslow. I wish he would shut up because I hate hearing him talk, but it feels like he's got his nuts tied already, like Heim Bloom style. So, man, I do not feel good about the future in terms of them investing in the team. I like the young talent on the team. I just don't think they're going to supplement it. And I mean, you see what happens. Even like the Baltimore Orioles, who are in a similar spot where they had a ton of young talent come up, and they did supplement it, fairly modestly. They got the big Corbin Burns signing, and then this was the team they went into the season with, and was like, all right, cool. They made one big move, and then Zach Eflin, and still they're kind of falling apart. So it takes a lot to build a contender. And I just don't know if the Red Sox are willing to do it. I feel like they're just going to keep rolling the dice on these extremely low odds plays and hope that something good happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look right at the Orioles obviously there's plenty of time to go. Guys on that team are going to grow. I think there's brighter days ahead for them, but you can see right now some of the risks of operating the way that they have. I think they've done their part to try to build a rotation around their bats, but even some of their bats, it's like some of these guys they called up, Heston Kjerstad, Kobe Mayo, like plenty of guys. Jackson Holliday is probably the best example of this, where guys don't have instant success, and you need to give those guys opportunities to have them grow into what you think they can be, but also you don't want to waste years of like Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman. And I think the same is going to end up potentially being said about the Red Sox with guys like Jarren Duran and Tristan Casas. Like, if the big 4 come up and don't hit right away, then it's like, oh wow, we're wasting like Devers prime, and we're wasting Tristan Casas is taking this big step forward into this elite bat, and Jarren Duran is this stud, and it's like, wow, like we're really waiting for this big four that's going to take 2 or 3 years to get there. So it's a little scary. The Orioles are kind of the prime example of how you build the long way, and it's kind of like an exaggerated version of what the Red Sox have done. But like, if you don't supplement quickly and in the right way, it leaves you. I mean, obviously they're in the playoffs for the second year in a row, but it still leaves you in a less than ideal spot than a team like the Yankees that goes out and gets the Juan Soto, that goes out and signs the Garrett Cole and the Carlos Rodon and signs the rotation. They developed some starting pitching, but they signed others so that they could trade pitching prospects for like Juan Soto. They haven't done everything perfectly, but them being willing to spend money has allowed them to make mistakes. And the Red Sox haven't been allowed to make mistakes because they haven't spent.
Question for you guys. How good would you feel right now if the Red Sox roster and farm system was exactly the same, but Dave Dombrowski was the GM? I'd feel great.
Well, I feel like you'd have to feel great because if Dombrowski proved that he could build up the farm system to the level the Red Sox system has been built up to, then that's like his one wart.
No, I'm saying like if everything happened the same way that it has happened up until now, and then out of nowhere Dave Dombrowski came back and now he's the GM again. Like, he didn't build it. Like, Chaim Bloom still built the farm and everything. But now magically Dave Dombrowski's the GM, and he has this treasure trove of prospects and a pretty okay major league team. Probably
I'd be
about
scared.
A 500 team. I'd feel so fucking good right now.
I'd be scared.
I'd be fired up, baby.
I'd be scared.
This is the worst case scenario already. We haven't made the playoffs in 5 of 6 years. This sucks.
I'd be scared that a potentially long window that I think, whether they spend or not, they're going to have it. I'd be scared that window would get condensed into like a couple of years and expire the second that like Casas hits free agency and Duran hits free agency. Like, condense the prospects and make like an 8-year window into like a 3-year window.
I don't think there's an 8-year window. That's
the best case scenario. I'm just saying, like, that's the potential. And like, if you trade like 2 or 3 of the big four, you are limiting your window. That's just, you can't deny it. You're limiting the length of your window because you'd be trading them for guys with 2 years.
Isn't that how the Red Sox won all 4 or at least 3 out of 4 of their recent World Series? They'd be really bad, then they'd go all in, win the World Series, go back down, win the World Series, go back down, win the World Series. They did it 4 times. Right, great. Those were the best times.
I mean, the World Series years were the best times, but there are ways to like win championships and win championships while having sustained success, where you win the World Series and then don't miss the playoffs the next year, which has happened for each of the last 2 Red Sox World Series championships.
Well, then this window that you speak of, this better be
good
baseball. This better be the best baseball ever for 7 or 8 years, because I no team is worth this crap that we've dealt with as Red Sox fans. Not getting to watch our team in the playoffs for 5 out of 6 years. You're the Red Sox, man. I was talking to Reese on Baseball Isn't Boring about this, about how you can't grade the Red Sox the same way you grade other teams. You have a higher standard for a reason. You have more resources. You have a bigger market. You have a rabid fan base. There's no excuse for this. I don't care if this modern day building of a team that the Astros look great, but nothing is worth going through this many bad years. It's absurd. So next year, I hope, is the year it starts to turn around. I think it will. I just don't know if it's going to be enough to really contend for the World Series unless you get another season like 2024 in which there's no really standout team. But how often does that happen? This is kind of an anomaly, not the norm. So we'll see, man. I would love if Dave Dombrowski was the GM right now. We'd have Garrett Crochet on the Red Sox tomorrow, which would be illegal. But Sammy, make it happen.
Right there, though, I think those are the moves that you can look at the Red Sox potentially making. I think they're going to be in on the big starting pitcher trade candidates. I specify trade candidates because, especially like I've been messing around and fucking around with these cap sheets, and shout out to Red Sox payroll for allowing me to get started with that. They have a really good template if you want to play around with it yourself.
Great account. That's like a must follow on Twitter for Red Sox fans. Red Sox payroll.
Definitely. And it's like it's so funny because like I've got like the luxury tax line, which is 241 million, but then I have like the John Henry tax line, which like obviously we don't know, and I'm just taking a guess at, but like who the fuck knows?
Those are two fake caps that are restricting the Red Sox, because the luxury tax is just the tax. You can go over
dude.
it.
That doesn't restrict the Red Sox anymore because they don't approach it.
They don't even get near it. The luxury tax is like a super electric fence that if you get close to it, you start to feel it. And the John Henry is afraid of electricity. His body is made of even more water than the average human. That's why he's afraid. So
no, but I think trade wise, I think you can get excited about stuff there. The one thing that's interesting to me, just to like pivot the discussion for the end part of this podcast, is we have spent this entire podcast talking about starting pitching and how they're going to need to pay the ace or trade for the ace. And like, if they don't do that, then like what's going to happen? The starting pitching down the stretch has not been the Red Sox problem. And in fact, if you take the whole year, they have a top, I believe, 6 or 7 starting rotation ERA in the majors. The defense has been a problem, and you could say that that's contributing to the pitchers maybe not going as deep into games as you'd like them to. But also, I think that's also on the starting pitchers. They've done a solid job of limiting runs, but not a lot of times have you seen these guys go into the 7th and 8th innings. So that's something I'd like to see next year. But we saw the offense fall apart for an extended period of time, and we saw the bullpen fall apart for pretty much the entire second half.
Gordo,
so like, it takes
can I
a
add
lot.
in about your pitching take? I just want to add one thing.
Do it.
I agree with everything you said. You do need more guys to eat innings, but also you got to think, if you're planning on making the playoffs, you need a motherfucker for that game 1. You need a guy like Tarek Skubal. Like, the Tigers are far from the best team in the playoffs, but they're going to feel outstanding in game 1 about their chances because they got a monster on the mound. And if you take the lead in game 1, shifts the momentum. You can lose game 2 and you're still like, okay, now we're tied. You can win game 2. Now you got a chokehold on the series, or in this case, you win the series with the new playoff format for the wild card round. So yes, I think the pitching staff is good, but you still need the head of the dragon, like a real scary guy that you feel great. Like, or alternatively, if you're not going to get a superstar, you get a guy like Evaldi who you feel great about in a playoff series. Like, he's not Garrett Cole numbers wise, but you know that he's going to give you a good start when you need it. So that's what they need. Crochet's my guy. I'm going to talk about him so much this winter. You guys are going to be sick of it. I
don't think I'm going to get sick of it. I don't
want to hear him again.
I don't know. I'm like, the more every single day I get more on board the Crochet train. The only thing that limits me there is is that he's only 2 years of control. But obviously you want to pay these guys. But shit,
when
man,
I talk about Crochet, whenever I talk about him, to be very clear, it's under the assumption that if they acquired him, they would extend him. Because that's
such a big assumption. That is a huge assumption.
I don't think it is, because if they would acquire, there's no way they would acquire him without the intent to extend him. That would be completely opposite of what they've been saying they want to do and what they've been doing. They extended Bayo, they extended Rafaela.
Yeah, but these are guys who are far away from free agency. Garrett Crochet, just 2 years away.
But that doesn't.
It's not about the age. I'm sure they want to do it. I'm just saying that Crochet has incentive to wait because he's only 2 years away. Whereas like a guy like Bayo, a guy like Rafael, it's like, oh my God, I have to be good for 5-6 years to get to free agency. Whereas Crochet has so much less to do. You're going to have to pay him more. And we know the Red Sox haven't loved to shell out those 9-figure contracts. So like, that's why I think they might be a little bit more up the Mariners tree.
Maybe.
But it all works. They're all number ones. And I agree with you, Sammy, to go back to your previous point that you need that number one in the postseason. But I'm just saying, like, we're going to have all these conversations on that number one starter all offseason. And this might be like a money aside point, because I feel like the offense is far more likely to get fixed via trade, or adjusted. I shouldn't say fixed, adjusted via trade. But like, you need right-handed hitting. You've got 4 awesome prospects down there. Only one of them is a right-handed hitter. You've got a lot of outfielders, too many to start. You've got a lot of middle infielders, too many to start. There's going to need to be some realignment there. That's going to be probably, in my opinion, the most interesting story to watch this offseason, just because I think you can say with certainty that something's going to happen there. I don't know what they're going to get, but something's going to happen there.
Would you trade Roman Anthony and
no,
like David Sandlin for Crochet and Lou
No.
Bob and then just be the best team in the league next year?
No.
No, I wouldn't either, but that would be fun.
I would
Dombrowski would
trade
do it.
what?
Dombrowski would do it, and the Red Sox would win the World Series, and then he'd go on vacation for like 3 years. See you guys. Congrats on the title.
I'm willing. Like, obviously, everyone is on the table for the right trade, but I'm pretty much willing to talk anything except Anthony and Casas. That's where I'm at. And like, this is like we're getting like all over the place, and these are discussions that we're gonna have all offseason long. But another thing is just the bullpen needs some oomph in the back. We saw how questionable it has been. Questionable is a nice way to put it. It has been the worst bullpen in baseball in the second half, and you're taking out the two pieces that have kind of start to finish side for health reasons because Chris Martin had a couple IL stints. But Chris Martin and Kenley Jansen have been the two rocks at the back of your bullpen for the better part. No, not for the better part, for literally for 2 years. If it were up to me, the very first thing I would do this offseason, like before the postseason even ends, I would find a way to make sure that Chris Martin is back on this team on a 1-year deal. He said he probably only wants to pitch for one more season. Perfect. Come back, pitch for one more season in Boston. Hopefully he doesn't care that much about winning a World Series because then he's going to want to go to a better team. But I don't know what he's going to command. His ERA is in like the mid to high threes area this year. So it's not like that one ERA it was the other year. But those of us that watch the team know that you feel freaking great when he's in the game, and it's for good reason. Doesn't walk guys. He's great. Only going to command 1 year. Just a solid guy to start your offseason because you're going to need to figure out what else you're doing with the back of that bullpen.
Sure. Go for it. I would like to have Chris Martin back for another year. Like I've said a few times, I like veterans in the bullpen. I feel like that's a great role for if you got older guys on the team, have them come out of the pen, calm the storm. So yeah, Chris Martin, I think that'd be great. I've few guys I can recall that I feel more comfortable with when they come into a game than Chris Martin. He's just so steady. I think it's because he doesn't walk anybody.
Yeah, definitely.
Something about that. It's just great. It's like Koji-ish to a lower degree, but still, the fact that he's in that realm is pretty impressive.
And it's you go through. I know they're losing Jansen and hopefully not Martin, but he's on potential. He's going to be a free agent. If your bullpen looks something like, and we're going to have this discussion a million times this offseason too. I think Justin Slayton should be the favorite for the closer job, regardless of who they get. But if your setup men are Chris Martin and a lefty that you can seriously trust, maybe they look to Tanner Scott. That kind of fits the mold of everything they've been looking for, which is a lefty with swing and miss stuff. You can go back to the deadline. They were looking for stuff. And based off of Cora's interview on WEEI, where he talked about offering or inquiring about some of the closers on the market and getting asked about the big three. My guess is Tanner Scott was in those conversations, and obviously they balked at that price, but now that it's money, who knows? So Slayton, Martin, a lefty, we'll say Tanner Scott. Liam Hendricks is going to come back. Garrett Whitlock, I assume, will be in the pen. Michael Fulmer is coming back. We haven't talked about him all year. Brennan Bernardino as a second lefty and Cooper Criswell as a mop-up man. And then you've got a gazillion depth pieces in AAA in that scenario. Zach Kelly, Greg Weisser, obviously Chris Murphy. I don't know if he's going to be starting or a reliever when he comes back. He obviously had the Tommy John surgery, but we'll see what role he's in. Luis Guerrero down there, Cam Boozer down there in that scenario. Isaiah Campbell, who we'll see if he's still in the 40-man. We haven't heard about him at all, but I don't know. That would be a bullpen I'd feel fairly confident with. I say fairly because it's a lot of the same pieces as this year and no certainty with Slayton as the closer, but
I just want them to name a closer. Make it very clear who's closing games. Roles matter. Papelbon was very, very clear with that when we spoke to him, former closer. I feel like he would know. So he was very gung-ho about need roles to be defined. So whoever is the closer, it's nice that they have a few decent options. I feel like there's not as many dominant closers as there were when we were growing up, high school, middle school. There were so many guys you could look to that were dominant in that role. Nowadays, there's like a handful of elite ones, and then another group of okay ones, and a good amount of teams that don't have a legit, like the Royals, Urseg, I guess, MacArthur. I don't know. So
it's
Yankees
switched.
Yankees don't have a closer.
Yeah.
Bum.
No, you're right, Sammy. There's certainly fewer than there used to be, and in today's league, it's if you can develop the guy. I mean, he may not be your closer for 6-7 years, but if you can develop a guy who's going to be your closer for like 3 years, that's a huge success. And maybe that's Justin Slayton.
God, I'm just looking at more of these Breslow quotes. This is going to be a long, long winter. This is probably the least confident I've felt going into an offseason in a long time because all the things I thought were going to happen have happened, but only like 50% of the way. It's just so slow. I can't believe the Red Sox are reduced to this.
I'll leave you with this because we got to wrap soon, and we have completely lost Pat. His Wi-Fi just died on us. But
Pat's Wi-Fi was eliminated.
yeah, Pat's Wi-Fi was hanging on by a thread like the Red Sox and their sub 1% playoff odds, and then it got eliminated. But I'll leave you with this because you talk about confidence going into the offseason. I have probably the same confidence as you in regards to the spending, but I personally am optimistic about the fact that Craig Breslow's head has been in the right place in regards to guys he's interested in. I trust his judgment more than I did a year ago because even though he may not have signed or traded for the guys that crushed it, obviously O'Neill was an example of him doing just that. But like a lot of the guys that he's getting credit for in that interview when he talked about the guys that he was interested in, I guess he's kind of half giving himself credit for, and maybe half of it's the question. But his head's in the right spot. He knows he has to make trades. He's going to have a whole offseason to do it. He's now knows the whole system. He's going to be able to make trades, hopefully with conviction. He's shown that he's been willing to make ballsy moves in the past, whether it be the Verdugo trade or the Nick York for Quinn Priester trade. Both of them took nuts. I think we're going to see some fireworks. I just don't know. I don't know if it's going to be with the spending. I'm with you on the spending, but I do think we're going to see a better version of the Boston Red Sox next year, not just because you're going to be forced to see it because the kids are going to come up, but you're going to see them make a trade or two this offseason, and I think that it's going to be a landscape shifting couple of moves for the Red Sox, and whether that be a giant move for an ace like we talk about Garrett Crochet, we talk about those Mariners guys, or whether it be for a guy that he thinks can be that. Like last offseason, we talked about Jesus Luzardo tons, and now if they traded for him this offseason, I feel like we'd all be super disappointed that that's the one guy. But all that matters is the results on the field. And if the guy that they get pitches, like if they pay a guy the amount that Seth Lugo got and they get the production that Seth Lugo gave this year, then guess what? You got an ace. So it's just going to be a long 182 days, if I guess on drop day, till we get to see the Red Sox play a game in which it actually counts again. Like I guess we'll watch these last 3 games and we'll do a really quick preview of the upcoming Rays series, the final series of the season, the final Fenway series of the season. We will do that on the next episode. It won't be all we do, but we will do that preview. And then it's curtains for the Sox. Props to them for only playing 3 100% meaningless games this year, as opposed to last year where it was more, and they finished 11 games out of the wild card last year, which means they were eliminated far before they were mathematically eliminated. You give them credit for that, but understand that we need to see better days, and we need to see it next year.
We don't want to be talking about them reaching the bar that we set for them the day they get eliminated with more regular season games to go.
Yeah. Like I remember when we first started this podcast last offseason, we had hoped that they were going to spend a bunch of money and be really good this year. And then when they didn't, I was really nervous that we were going to have to do a bunch of shows this year, like for 2 months. Like I was scared they were going to sell at the deadline. That was when we were going to call the season over, was after they sold at the deadline. And we were going to be doing 2 months worth of podcasts for games that didn't matter. And the thought of that just, I mean, like it scared me a little bit, to be honest with you. Not because I didn't think we could do it, but because like, shit, man, like if we're going to be as locked into this team as you need to be to do these shows as often as we do them, the least they can do is put a winning product on the field that's going to win. And if they're not going to do that, it's tough to put as much into this team as we do. And a lot of everyone who's listening, if you're listening to the show, you certainly do too. And shit, man, it's been fucking 6 years of practically nonstop just mediocrity. Misery might be a little bit far, but mediocrity certainly is not. And it's got to be next year. You can't miss the playoffs 6 out of 7 years. That cannot be an option for the Red Sox, especially when you're as close as you are and as close as you've been, because they were close last year too, and they could have made it this year had they supplemented it. But hopefully they see it differently this year. Hopefully they finish at or above 500, and the ownership group looks at the piece of paper that shows the record and says, "Oh, like they were above 500. I guess they have a chance." Because beats me if they watch these games.
That says it all. The fact that we have to wonder about that.
Yeah. So that'll do it for episode, 136, 136 episodes all about the 2024 Red Sox season. We will do 136 episodes all about the 2024 Red Sox season. We will do 137th in your ears tomorrow night, or dropping tomorrow. God, I'm getting tired. It's late. We'll do a couple more after. So I don't know. We'll probably end up like at around 140 something episodes all about this season in which the Red Sox didn't make the playoffs. So that shows you where we're at. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We will be back tomorrow. Before you head out, remember, subscribe, rate us 5 stars, all your podcast platforms, on YouTube as well, on the WEI channel. You can hit the thumbs up on those videos. We've got that Play Tessie playlist there. You can see all our episodes. And as always, on the socials, at Play Tessie on both Twitter and Instagram. Whew. That's curtains, baby. For Sammy, for Pat, who's hopefully his Wi-Fi will be fixed in time for the next episode, but we'll see on that. And for Joe producing in the back, it's Gordo here for Play Tessie, episode 136. Peace.